Well, I'm new to the church and I've only met Michael very recently, but I think many of you have known him for up to 20 years. He had a leading role in building these very useful church halls in the noughties, and more recently that wonderful new church building out in front. He had years of experience in construction as a quantity surveyor. Now, I know no project is perfect, but did you have sleepless nights when these were going up?
There was lots of sleepless nights. When we found 200 tonne of asbestos under the floor, which we hadn't accounted for, it was, horrendous. Yeah. Anyway, it all worked out.
And they've been very useful in these years, I imagine.
It's been a great community.
Yeah. I've been reading about your life. We'll come back to your business later, but reading about your life. And the first thing I noticed is that you were familiar with the inside of hospitals, even in your teens. I think you were in 9 months at the age of 12, 3 months at the age of 14, another month at the age of 17. Why was that? What led to all that?
So this was a time when, long before they used to get you in and get you out, I had my right leg lengthened by 7.5 centimetres. That's 2.5 inches in old money. When I was 12, I never got out of bed for 3 months. I was on traction, and where they were pulling the bones apart to stretch the leg. It was a traumatic time for a 12-year-old. I had a lot of homesickness, I remember.
And it must have been fairly difficult for your education.
The education was great. I slept through it all.
And you didn't notice?
Well,
were you behind?
Yeah, miles behind. I lost a year, basically. But I've always been good at blagging, so I got through it. Yeah. But
that was plus I gather quite a difficult home life. Your parents divorced when you were aged 15. That, I seem to read from what you wrote, made quite a difference on your behaviour.
I had a family event, which I'm not going to go into too much detail. If somebody asks me, I'm going to tell them, but I'm just going to say this. When we were 7, Malcolm and I, on New Year's Eve that year, back in 1965, there was an event in our family house which was life-changing. And things between my mum and dad were never ever the same again. And life at home was fraught. Yeah.
Yes, you said, I think, from a young age, I had little or no boundaries in my life.
Well, you know, actually, I'm going to say, Malk, is it okay if I say, yeah. I need to say this, that I loved my mum and dad dearly. And part of this exercise of going through this interview is that we all make mistakes in life. My dad made a terrible mistake when we were 7. He got drunk and he thrashed my mum. And I remember as a 7-year-old I was trying to stop him. And Malk slept through it all. We ended up sleeping over the road that night, and I think it's probably safe to say their marriage was broken and irretrievably at that time. And my mum stopped, but we always knew that when the opportunity came, she was going to go, which is what happened. And so for me, to answer your question, I put up boundaries, I put up barriers. From an early age, I remember thinking, well, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, how I want to do it, when I want to, how I want to. And I protected myself. Mm. Yeah.
And there's a sense that all that had an effect that just made you a rebel out. I mean, everyone rebels in their teenage, but you did it in spades.
Well, yeah. I was never a fighter. But, you know, from an early age, particularly in my teens after my mum and dad split up, I used to go and get drunk every weekend. I mean, every weekend. Spent every single penny I got. And I managed to hold down the job. I wasn't alcoholic or anything, but I remember Helen said to me just recently, which I knew nothing about, my dad was concerned that I was going to become an alcoholic. And it led to an awful lot of promiscuity, had no boundaries, had no conscience, really. Just did what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it.
Which may have something to do with the fact you mentioned that you faced death, I think, 10 times. Now, some of those were not your fault. Apparently, some heavy guttering fell just missing you. But twice, 20 years apart. And one of them actually ended you up in hospital, is that right?
That's right, yeah. So the first of those occasions was 6 metre length of commercial galvanised gutter that weighed a tonne, had to be lifted up by crane. And it slipped out of the... I was working a weekend to earn some money at British Leyland, as it then was, car factory. And it came out of the straps, and I remember taking 2 steps to one side, and it landed where I was. It didn't come my way, it sort of bounced and went the other way. And the second occasion, I was about 40. There was some scaffold up on a bridge over Cornwall Road in London, which is by Waterloo Station. And I could hear some people walking around on the scaffold. And they were, whatever they were doing, one of them kicked a piece of cast iron gutter. And it shot down in front of my face here. I remember seeing it, went past my face here, and it hit me on the knee. And it completely poleaxed me. It put me in hospital just for the day. Another split second, it would have hit me on the head.
Yeah. Now, those are the ones that weren't your fault.
They weren't my fault, no.
Now, the first one that I've read that happened when I think you were 18, you crossed the main London to Birmingham railway line.
Yeah.
And train came past, and you could just and it was touching you, and the driver actually had to stop.
He stopped the train and came running up the track. So I was showing off, which was common for me. And you used to be able to walk across this track, because we used to go and play golf at the 9-hole golf course. But I hadn't been there for many years, and that had long been since taken out. Main London to Birmingham railway line. And my mates went up over the railway bridge. I went looking for where we used to walk across, and it had gone. I thought, well, I'll walk across anyway. And one of my mates shouted, it was on top of the bridge, he shouted, "Mike, you do know there's a train coming?" And I looked. I took 2 steps, 1, 2, grabbed hold of a pole at the post. I could feel the train doing this as it went past me. I heard him slam on the brakes. He came running up the track. I thought, I'm not hanging around for this. And anyway, got together with my mates. And one of them, Paul Blair, said to me, "Do you believe in God, Mike?" I said, "Yeah, I believe in God." He said, "You need to say your prayers every day." Do you know how close that was? Right. It was close.
And it was a few years later, I think it was on Spaghetti Junction, you had a very bad crash?
Had a really bad crash. And actually what I was doing was looking at a crash on the other side of the road. And went into the back of somebody in front of me, a terrible rate of knots. Felt for that man many times for his whiplash. But it threw me into the wall at Spaghetti Junction, Birmingham. And I hit it so hard, the car came to a shuddering halt. And I got out of the car, looked over the top. It was about 100 foot over the top.
And you say that was just one of several?
I could give you Lots. I'll give you a couple more. I went on holiday to Magaluf when I was about 22. And I'd probably been drinking most of the afternoon, and I'd run out of money. So I thought to myself, I need to go and get some more money. So I went up to the room. I didn't take my key with me. But the maid was in the room next door, cleaning the room. I thought, oh, I've left the balcony door over, I'll jump the balcony. And I got to the balcony, and it was about 5 foot from one balcony to the next balcony. So I had to get over it, and then get over the top, and there was a post about as thick as that. And as I got it, it moved. And anyway, I managed to grab on, clamber over the top, got me money, went down and got into the swimming pool and looked up the 6 stories, thinking, what would my mum and dad be saying now if the worst had happened?
It's so difficult for me, having only met you briefly in the last couple of weeks, to think this dangerous boy, young man, compared with the responsible adult you are now.
I was reckless.
Yeah.
I was so reckless. Yeah. Actually, I haven't told you about this one, but I went to a curry house with some friends. I was in the snooker team about 6:30, and it was like a railway carriage. So if you can imagine people back to back facing each other with a small alleyway, and we went down by the kitchens, and there was a young man in there with an Asian girl, and they were arguing with each other. And they kept going on, and 2 lads came in behind them and sat behind them, elderly men, mid-40s probably then, but he was in his 20s. And my friend said to him, "What a life with a wife." And he got so out of his pram, he started ranting at him. So I tried to calm it down. I said, "Look, you didn't really mean anything by it. You need to calm down." He pointed to my friend. He said, "You're first." And he said to me, "You're second. I'm leaving now, but I'm coming back." He left. He never paid. The man behind him said, "Do you know who that is?" I said, "No." He said, "That's Big John's brother. You need to finish your curry and go." We finished. Actually, there's a side story, which one of the guys I was with only had one eye, and his other eye was a glass eye. And Ian Stock said to him, "Can you take your eye out?" He said, "Yes." So he took his eye out. He said, "Can I borrow it?" He rolled it under the kitchen door, and he said to him, "Where's our curry? We've been waiting a long time." Anyway, the eye came back, the curry came, and we're just about finished. And this lad came in with an axe, the lad that had been arguing. He smashed the axe into the reception table and looked down the archway, and he said to Ian, "You're first," and he said to me, "You're second." There was nowhere to go. And as he got the axe up here, and as he was walking down the alleyway, the bloke that had been sat there got behind him and wrestled him, and they were wrestling him. This axe was flying around. We just ran out and left.
Looking back over your life, I get the impression that the way you see it is that God was trying to reach you again and again, but you were just spending your time ignoring him. And that started, I think, at the age of 17 when Malcolm became a Christian and you decided you wanted to do the Frank Sinatra way, do it my way.
I did. I was very good at it. Yeah. Malc became a committed Christian at 17, and we separated because he went to university and I didn't. I'd stopped on for another year's education. And I, no end of times, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, I went to sermons and churches where the calling of God on my life was profound. But actually, I rejected it over and over.
It's interesting. You say that you knew that destruction was potentially around the corner, so you prayed to God for a wife. Now, I'm glad, and you would be glad, that I'm not God, because I think under those circumstances, I would have said, you must be joking. I've shown you how it's right to live, and you're just ignoring it. I've got a wonderful wife lined up for you, but not until you turn the corner. But he answered your prayer as you asked for it. How did that happen?
Actually, everything was looking shiny from the outside, but on the inside, I was broken. And, out of control in all respects. And I remember praying to God, and I gave him a specification. In the early years, I might have changed that spec a bit. Where is she? Where's my... Right. He answered my calling beyond my wildest dreams. She has been the most amazing wife to me.
How did you meet?
I was moving house. I was working away from home in North Yorkshire, and I was moving house. Somebody said there's a house with 3 girls in it. I thought, that sounds good. So I went round to this house, knocked on the door. Helen answered it. This is God's honest truth. She started speaking to me. I thought to myself, I couldn't marry her.
But even with God and Helen both working on you, you were resistant. But a few years later, I think you must have been about 35, my estimate is, you said you became a Christian. But it sounds from the way you wrote it that you were trying to swim with one foot firmly on the bottom. You were calling yourself a Christian, but you weren't really living the life.
Yeah, actually, one of the defining moments, I was at my brother's wedding to his beloved, and I remember confessing my faith in Jesus. But I was still living in the flesh. It's definitely one foot in both camps. So I had not surrendered or committed to Christ, but even though I said I had, yeah.
Now, at this stage, health was still an issue, and it goes back to another time in hospital, which we haven't yet mentioned, when you were 21. In fact, you were in, I think, twice within a month.
Yeah.
And that was the ankle problem.
I'd been in plaster. My right leg had been in plaster for literally 12 months the first time. I had operations. Further, you get an imbalance in your body, and I was limping. I was in plaster from the age of 12 to 13, then 14, 17, and my right ankle wasn't working properly, and it was painful, and the pain was getting worse. And I went to see a surgeon. He said, I can correct that. And he took the cartilage out of my right ankle and said that would work, and it didn't. When he was performing the operation, it didn't. And the very next day, he said to me, it didn't work, it failed. I need to take some bone out the right leg that you've had lengthened, and I'll correct it. I'll realign your foot, bring your foot up like this. And he did, but that operation caused me so much pain. But the pain was terrible following that.
And it wasn't only your ankle, it included, over those years, it took back pain, and then suddenly, I think you were now 38, Helen was about to give birth, you had a prolapsed disc, Helen was in one hospital, you were in another hospital, and you weren't given a very hopeful prognosis.
I'd been having physio, and he put me on a traction machine, and where I had this belt up here and a belt on the hip, and it was pulling my body apart. And for the first time in 18 months, I came out of that session with the physio thinking, God, that is so much better. That is so much. And Helen had made spaghetti bolognese. I got home. I went to the pub to have a couple of beers on the way home. And she came to see me. She said, I've made you spaghetti bolognese. You just need to heat it up. And I did. And as I reached over to pick the spaghetti up, I had this searing pain in my back. And my legs wouldn't hold me. And I fell on the floor. Managed to get into bed. Called the doctor. Sorry, Amanda. He said, take some paracetamol. During the night, that Helen's waters broke. And that set her off in labour. And I knew I wasn't going to get there. And there were 2 ambulances on our drive. One to take Helen to hospital and one to take me to the hospital. Freddie gave birth to our dear beloved Freddie. And I went to hospital where I became numb from the waist down. And they were poking needles in my nether regions. I couldn't feel anything. I couldn't urinate. I couldn't pass any motion. The surgeon came in. He was a Muslim man, very nice man. And he said to me, if I don't operate today, you're going to be incontinent or in a wheelchair for the rest of your life.
And when he operated, just before, as you were being put to sleep, what did he ask you?
He said, is there anything you want to say to me before I put you down? I said, yes. May the Lord my God be with you.
Now that's a very interesting reply from someone who, it seems to me, had a very semi-detached relationship with God.
Yeah.
Why did you say it, do you think?
You know, I've always been able to face fear. I can stand up and when inside, my inside is frantic. On the outside, I can look quite calm. But I knew it was a defining moment. I knew that operation was huge in my lifetime. I came to Christianity kicking and screaming. Yeah, that's true.
And nothing much happened, but 5 years later you came here to Otford, and you came with your 3 sons, young then, and are they with us today?
2 of them are.
2.
It's my eldest son here, Tom, and the one with the waistcoat at the back, Freddie.
So here you are, moving into Otford, and then I gather Helen announced, we are going to church, which wasn't the royal we, she was involving you. We are going to church, is that right?
She got the boys into a holiday club, which Kath Paulet had organised. And unbeknown to us, we didn't know Kath Paulet was the minister at Otford Methodist Church. And Helen was really good at arranging things. And she'd met Kath at the school gates. I don't know what Kath had said to her. And I just thought it was part of the holiday club. And I walked in, greeted by Margaret Matthews, who said to me, we've been praying for you. I remember walking into that little church, this little chapel here, thinking, okay, Lord, you've got me. What do you want me to do? But it's still a journey. Yeah. I was still on a journey, but it was at that moment in time where I thought, yeah, I'm going to give this what I've got. Actually, I surrendered. I wouldn't say I fully surrendered.
No. You then went on the Alpha course.
Yeah.
Now, many people do the Alpha course, and it helps people to clarify what their understanding of the Christian faith is. But with you, it reduced you to tears. Why was that?
I had a profound understanding that all through my life, the Lord had been with me. And even when I was making such a mess of things, actually He was right there. Even when I had not submitted to Him or was reading the Bible or walking in the way, the Lord had chosen me. He had predestined me. And John Kernow gave me a Bible at Alpha, and he wrote in it Psalm 119, 105. May my light be a lamp to your path and a light to my feet. Which stuck with me, and He'd guided me through all of the disasters. Honestly, so close to death so many times. But there was a purpose. I had a purpose for living.
We'll find out more about your life here, but I've mentioned your business only briefly. But at this stage, you were saying your business was going from strength to strength. What was the business?
So I'm a mechanical electrical services quantity surveyor, and my brother and I set up a business called Harris Consulting, which dealt with construction disputes, and most of our work was in London. And so we acted as party representatives in dealing with construction disputes, in arbitration. Adjudication came later, arbitration, litigation. Started taking exams, still taking exams.
And those words, dispute management, arbitration, adjudication, mediation, they all have pastoral aspects, bringing warring parties together. Was that important to you?
I loved to fight. I absolutely loved being in the trenches on a building site. And I was good at it.
Looking at the result of some of your cases, again and again I see settled pre-trial, without recourse to formal proceedings, concluded in mediation, case settling early, settle favourably in mediation. Is that just par for the course, or was that something about your particular approach to these situations?
Actually, being in formal dispute is extremely stressful for those that are in it, and life-changing in many circumstances. Because once you're in it, you can't get out. Once the people start spending money, and it becomes irretrievable without going through the process. So, for anybody that's warring, that's going to go to litigation, if you can settle it, get out, settle it at the earliest opportunity, and get out for your well-being, and actually for certainty. For the certainty of your own self-preservation, expenditure, get on and move on to the next thing.
And then you now live in a house that you and Helen built 15 years ago.
We do. Yeah. I was lying in the bath. We lived in Station Road. I was lying in the bath, and Helen said to me, found a house. Can we go and have a look at it? We went up over the next few days, and it was absolutely lashing down with rain. It was on a lovely spot on top of the hill. She said to me, The house was terrible. The house was an absolute wreck, dangerous, actually completely dangerous. And I looked at it, I thought, well, whatever's wrong with it, I can put it right. And I couldn't, because it just needed pulling down, being rebuilt, which is what we did.
Right. Yeah. You also used your experience in the construction industry to help build an assembly hall for a school in Kenya. How did that come about?
A past president of the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors sat at lunch with my brother and said, "Can you help me with this building?" He said, "No, I can't, but I know somebody who might be able to," which was me. And I got to meet with this man called Clifford Down. He'd been involved with building schools in the Rift Valley region of Kenya. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. They are the most delightful people.
And it wasn't just one hall. You took on more than you bargained for, because you have been chair of that charity. Was it HSK?
Harambee Schools for Kenya. Yeah.
And Harambee means?
Pulling together.
Pulling together. And Helen is the company secretary.
She does takes the notes.
And so what does that charity do?
Well, we look after 6 schools, 4 primary, 2 secondary. There were more schools than that, but it was unsustainable. And we have a feeding program that feeds the children, particularly in the primary school. I mean, they're in the middle of nowhere. Some of them are in drought areas. They're literally starving, the kids, when they come to school. They might get a bottle of water and they're picking berries to put in the water as they come to school. So we've set up feeding programs. We build them new classrooms, new chairs, new desks. We provide them with literature for learning literature. We give the teachers training with English teachers. We give them a chance. We give them an opportunity.
I mentioned your involvement in the new church building out the front. When that opened in 2017, as part of the celebration, there was a presentation from a man called Stephen Addison. Yeah. And you say that presentation moved your heart. Why?
It set up this... it's not a charity, because he's not registered it yet, but let's call it a charity, that was taking kids off the streets of East London, Barking, Dagenham, Newham, and where there was an awful lot of knife crime. Kids were being killed literally on a weekly basis. And it was something that was in my heart to come alongside him. So I sent him some money. Can we meet together? And I would call him a very close friend. No, he's an inspiration. He's truly anointed. And, you know, if I can help in any way.
And he's setting it up as a charity, and you're going to be a trustee, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
That's amazing. Let's go back, because the health roller coaster is not finished. 10 or 11 years ago, the ankle pain got worse. What happened then?
I've always been quite sporty, but I was getting to the point where the pain in my right ankle was so profound that I was literally living a life getting out of the house into the car, out the car into the office. And to do anything other than that would... I got through it, but the pain was just so incessant. I remember saying to Helen, I'm thinking I'm going to have my foot cut off. I would gladly have had it cut off at one point, I remember. I went to see a man called Graham Groom, who did ankle fusion, and which is literally that they cut your foot off from your leg and then they stick it back on. And he said to me, I said to him, will that mean that my right leg is any shorter? He said, yeah, 2 centimetres shorter at least. I said, I'm not doing that. I've had it lengthened. I've had it lengthened. I've already had it shortened by an operation was 21, and you're going to take another. But I couldn't continue. I waited about another 18 months. I could not continue with the pain, so I went to do it. And I'd gone to a healing service just before that time where I had a real optimism that the Lord was going to heal me at this service. And this man stood up and he said, I've got a feeling that somebody's got some steel in their right ankle, which I had. I had steel in the right ankle. And would they please stand up? And I thought, this is my moment. And I stood up, and so did 6 other people. So that, nothing happened. But the Lord said to me, I remember praying about it, the Lord said to me, I will heal you. I will take that pain away. And he did. And the pain's completely gone.
And how did that happen?
I had the right ankle fused.
It was fused?
Yeah. I can't move it.
And what about the 2 centimetres?
Yeah, I've got to bear with that.
Right. Then, it's not finished yet, 4 years ago, you were diagnosed with leukemia.
Yeah. Actually, this was at a time when Helen had just been diagnosed with cancer of the uterus. So I knew something was wrong, but actually my concern at the time was for her. And I went to the hospital and I had a bone marrow biopsy, which is how they found the leukemia. And she said to me, she said to me, when she was taking the biopsy, she said, do you take drugs? I said, no. Are you on warfarin? No. Are you sure you're not taking drugs? I'm positive. Are you sure you're not taking warfarin? I'm absolutely positive. It sets your alarm bells ringing. She said it'll be 3 weeks. It was less than that. She said to me, you need to come and see us. I said, I can't do that right now, we're going on holiday. I knew when I got back I was going to face it. And when I got into the room, the consultant was there, I sat here. There were 2 chairs, one for Helen, and there was somebody sat on the chair. And I looked and I thought, she's there to catch hold of Helen. But, by God's grace, it's a leukemia that is not going to kill me. Not yet, anyway. And if you're going to get leukemia, this is the one to get.
And you've recently had a CT scan. What's the position at the moment?
CT scan is all clear. Hallelujah.
You say hallelujah, but I can't help feeling that some people, hearing your story, all you've been through, and leukemia was just the cherry on the cake, some people would say, weren't you angry with God?
I don't think ever in my lifetime have I been angry with God. I can't think of any point in my life where I've raged at him. Actually, my overriding sense is that through all these trials and tribulations, he's been there. I'm so convinced of that. And I dedicate my life for his purposes.
Michael, thanks very much indeed for answering all my tough questions.